The Dukermutter. Long ago on the German Baltic Sea island of Pole, there lived a farmer's wife who was known far and wide for her greed. Although her fields were fertile and her henhouse was always full of eggs, she never shared even the smallest thing with anyone. Those who asked for help were turned away, and those who were hungry received not a single piece of bread from her. As a result, she was not well liked by the islanders. One year, when Shrove Tuesday evening came around again, the children followed the old custom of going from house to house. Cheerfully, they sang their songs and asked for eggs, sausage, or other small gifts. Eventually, they arrived at the door of the miserly farmer's wife. She heard the knocking and came up with a cruel idea. With a false smile, she stepped outside and handed the children a bowl full of eggs. At first, the children were delighted by the gift, but when they looked more closely, they noticed the foul smell and appearance of the eggs. Every single one of them was rotten and spoiled. Disgusted, the children threw the eggs away. Angrily, they shouted at the woman that her greed and wickedness would not go unpunished. They cursed her and continued on their way. That very night, the children's curse would unleash its terrible power. While the wicked woman sat alone in her house, a cold wind swept through the room. Outside, dark clouds gradually covered the moon, and an eerie silence settled over the island of Pole. Suddenly, the house began to tremble. The door burst open with a tremendous crash, and in a blaze of fire, the devil himself appeared. When the woman saw him, she screamed in terror. She remembered the children's curse and realized that the punishment for her wickedness had come at last. Desperately, she tried to flee, but the devil was faster. With an iron grip, he seized her by the hair. The woman struggled, screamed, and begged for mercy, but the devil showed none. He dragged her through the open doorway, beyond which yawned a fiery abyss of flames and brimstone. Then he vanished with her into hell. The next morning, the islanders found the house empty. No one had seen the woman again. Yet many immediately guessed what had happened. The devil had taken her away. Still, her story was far from over. For a long time, the people of Pole believed that the wicked woman had disappeared forever. After the devil had carried her off to hell, peace returned to the island, but that peace did not last. One day, several fishermen reported seeing a strange female figure along the coast at dusk. Others spoke of a ghostly apparition wandering among the trees at night. Soon it became clear that it was the spirit of the evil farmer's wife. She had returned from the depths of hell to the world of the living. Now she appeared all across the island. Sometimes she was seen on lonely paths, sometimes among trees and bushes, and sometimes near the farms of the islanders. Anyone who encountered her was overcome with terror. Her eyes glowed unnaturally, and her wicked laughter echoed through the night. Not infrequently, she would even rush at startled travelers and drive them away with shrill screams. Before long, the islanders gave the terrifying spirit a name. They called her the Dukermutter, meaning the devil's mother. Under this name, she became feared throughout the island, and over time her hauntings grew worse and worse. People hardly dared leave their homes after dark. Eventually, everyone agreed that something had to be done to end this dreadful nightmare. The islanders therefore turned to the pastor of the village of Kirchdorf, a pious and courageous man who was respected throughout Pole. As a servant of God, he was asked to put an end to the haunting. The pastor agreed and set out one dark night for the place where the Dukermutter had most often been seen. The pale moon hung above the trees when suddenly a cold wind arose. Then the Dukermutter appeared, drifting out from between the trees. Her eyes blazed with fury, and with a terrible scream she hurled herself toward the pastor. But he did not retreat. Raising his Bible high, he began to recite verses and psalms in a loud voice. At that very moment, something miraculous happened. Out of nowhere, a gigantic stovepipe appeared in the middle of the night. It was engulfed in flames inside and out, towering high above the treetops. No sooner had it appeared than it began drawing in the spirit of the Dukermutter with tremendous force. The Dukermutter shrieked with rage and despair. She struggled against the invisible power and tried to escape, but all her efforts were in vain. Closer and closer she was pulled toward the fiery opening until she was finally sucked completely into the stovepipe. With one last blood-curdling scream, she vanished inside and was hurled back into hell. Immediately afterward, the enormous stovepipe disappeared as if it had never existed. The forest fell silent, and peace returned to the night. Relieved, the pastor returned to Kirchdorf. By the next morning, the joyful news had spread from house to house across the entire island. The people rejoiced, believing that the spirit of the Dukermutter had finally been defeated. But that hope would prove only partly true. One day, the haunting began again. The Dukermutter no longer appeared as often as before, nor did she possess the same terrible power, yet her spirit had not been completely banished. Time and again, islanders reported strange and unsettling encounters. Sometimes she was seen in her old house, silently wandering through the dark rooms. At other times, she appeared in lonely caves or remote corners of the island. Most often, however, people spoke of seeing her in a dense thorn bush. There she sat in a new and frightening form. She wore a brightly colored red dress and a bonnet with two pointed flaps jutting out from either side of her head. Before her stood a magnificent golden spinning wheel, upon which she tirelessly spun thread. When night fell over the island, people could sometimes hear the soft whirring of the spinning wheel. The sound drifted across the fields, through the trees, and along the coast, filling the people with fear. Whenever the sound reached their ears, they knew that the Dukermutter was nearby once more, and so her name remained alive on the island of Pole for many years, passed down from one generation to the next.